Greetings everyone. In this video I'm going to begin with speaking about a dream that I had this week, and I'm calling this a vital dream vision of the fall of the Cabal. To kind of preface this, since the beginning of February of this year I've been maintaining a practice of recording content from at least one dream that I can recall each night. And this one particular night, a dream came up that seemed to be a symbolic account of what is actually transpiring on this planet right now. In the dream, there was a character representing the service to self elite of the planet, whose ultimate goal on an archetypal level is to steal and possess for themselves the power of the divine parents, the masculine and feminine creative source. So ultimately we're all connected to that prime creative source, you could say, but there are those who would like to be able to kind of be the, you could say, overlords in a sense of their own reality, completely independent of that source consciousness. So it's kind of a separatist mentality that they want to be able to be their own God separate from the original source God. People often refer to that as the Luciferian principle. Sometimes you'll see references in metaphysical writings to the Lucifer rebellion, and that's presented often in contrast to the Christ consciousness principle, which is the principle of seeking to be of service. You could call that service to others, and uniting with the divine in oneness or unity. So in this dream, in the process of seeking to steal, so to speak, from the divine, from those divine parents, this character was deceiving and manipulating children, and here the children were representing the masses or the general population of the planet to be servants. However, these children were now not complying, and also the divine parents were alert and intervening to turn the tables. So now with the development that appeared in this dream as a film being watched by the children called Winning, featuring the symbol of the letter Q, those who had been keeping the masses as deceived servants would now themselves be forced to become servants. Now, in the consciousness of the public at this time, there is a phenomenon known as Q or QAnon, which is presented as a military intelligence operation created by an alliance that's seeking to overthrow the existing dark power structure on the planet. And of course, this Q group, or whatever we would call them, has been claiming and often providing what they're claiming is proof that the current president of the United States is working in cooperation with them, is assisting them in their plan. And he's a character who of course presents himself as very competitive, very self-confident. People often see him as kind of arrogant or egotistical, but this idea of winning is something that people often associate with him, that he presents this attitude of winning at all costs, or that it's bad to be a loser. He makes fun of people at times when they appear to be on the short end of whatever competition is occurring. So that's kind of related to his personality. But in the context of this dream, the idea was that this alliance, which Q is representing, is actually winning their struggle or battle with the dark occult cabal that's been dominating our planet. My own view is to not fear what's unfolding or what is coming, but to practice patience, forgiveness, and the law of one, which you could sum up as to love thy neighbor as thyself, since your neighbor and yourself are both expressions or aspects of that one ultimate source. And to be cautious about rushing to judgment about people or situations. Things are often only seen clearly when reviewed in hindsight. And there's been so much disinformation and deception being spread or disseminated in our civilization that quite often things will turn out to be much different than we had originally thought or believed. And this is also true in regards to which people are actually caught up in darkness or shady activities. Sometimes there are people that are defamed or slandered in some way who we're told are in some way negative or reprehensible when they're really not so bad, so to speak, whereas other people are put in a very positive light, who are made to look like humanitarians or stellar citizens of some sort, when in reality they have a very dark shadow side that's being kept hidden. So until we really get to see the whole picture, or really get to perceive all the relevant facts, it's hazardous in a sense to draw conclusions or make judgments. Now, people often talk about particular dark occult organizations, and one that's been brought up an awful lot in the public consciousness in recent years is what's referred to as the Illuminati. And that's a name or title for secret societies that's been around for a long time, and it's probably been used by multiple organizations. So there isn't really just only one group or organization that's been referred to with that title. But the occult network, you could say, that's been dominating our planet, and that includes on a governmental and political level as well as an economic level. That particular organization is one that's kind of controlled at its core, in a sense, by bloodline families. So this Illuminati that people often talk of is very real, though there are multiple layers of or to their influence upon our society, and of people's involvement actually in that cult. So the inner bloodline families are the core, the central circle, in a sense, of the organization, while there are also other families and organizations that are used to serve the interests of that inner circle. And many people in society who may be involved in things like organized crime or dark occult activities will not know of the hidden hand that may be guiding their networks or organizations. Even in the major bloodline families, there have been people who wish to and may even attempt to break free of the cult, some of whom have aligned with this alliance that has been working for many decades to help bring down the cult and its corrupt control mechanisms. There are some people who are gaining public attention nowadays talking about this, speaking about this alliance plan. This includes people like David Wilcock, who's featured on the Ancient Aliens show, as well as had been the host of Cosmic Disclosure on the Gaia TV network. Corey Goode, who is one of the secret space program whistleblowers that David spoke with. Simon Parks, who's an ET contactee and whose family has a background in the intelligence agencies in Great Britain, Simon actually was a town council person in Great Britain for a while. And there are many others, people who have spoken out about these topics, each from their own experience and the information they've been exposed to. So not all the details of their stories match up exactly, but there's a lot of overlap or correlation between what many of these people are sharing. So they've spoken about this alliance and its connection to the QAnon phenomenon that was seemingly created to inspire the public to research conspiracies and to seek truth beyond the deceptive narratives presented by the cult-dominated mainstream media outlets. The Q posts online have been coordinated in a way to interact with presidential tweets to confirm to those viewing those posts that the president is acting in accord with Q and assisting their alliance's plan. And they've posted videos on YouTube with what they call the plan to save the world, which attempts to give kind of a general overview or summary of how they hope to carry out their mission, their effort to bring down this cabal. Now also, as a major part of the system of control, and both within the cult and within society as a whole, this involves trauma-based mind control. Detailed books on that topic include ones by Fritz Springmeyers. He talks about the Illuminati formula to create a mind control slave. Another author who's written a lot about this, who was involved in programming himself, is Stuart Swerdlow, whose books 13 Cubed and Blue Blood, True Blood go into some of the details about how that type of mind control programming works. And this is a very complex and detailed topic, and there are many aspects to mind control. Some of them involve abuse and torture, especially of young children. Some of it involves the use of different kinds of psychotropic drugs. Some of it involves frequencies, such as sound frequencies and electromagnetic frequencies. Some of it involves hypnosis. Some of it involves behavioral conditioning. So there are a variety of elements that are used in mind control, but kind of the core and the most powerful or significant aspect is what's done with trauma and actions instigated to produce trauma in young children. So there's often ritualistic physical and sexual abuse that are used by the cult to trigger dissociation and multiple personality disorder types of fragmentation. And this occurs in many cult members, not all of them, but there are many people in the Illuminati and related cult groups who are suffering from dissociation, what's nowadays called dissociative identity disorder in the psychiatric terminology. And this means that there are people who are playing various roles in our society who will also have alternate personas that appear normal and often don't even have an awareness of their own other selves that are engaged in some very horrific or abusive behaviors. The personalities that are engaged in dark, occult, and abusive activities will have a programmed belief that what they are doing serves some positive, liberating, or empowering purpose. So they don't look at themselves really, in most cases, as evil. They see themselves usually as part of a more superior or enlightened caste of society. Essentially, these are very psychologically disturbed and spiritually confused people And when the power structure that has guided them collapses and their psychological defense structure unravels as a consequence of that, many of them will likely seek and desire some form of healing and rehabilitation. Those will need understanding and compassion from other people as they seek reconciliation and reintegration into human society. Now, there may be other cult adherents who are unable to accept the reality they are now confronted with, and who may become destructive toward themselves or others, such as committing suicide or engaging in violent outbursts toward society. While it is vital to reclaim our power as spiritually aware human beings and to not let ourselves be deceived, abused, and terrorized anymore, we can also have understanding and some compassion toward even the most violent and disturbed people who might lash out. We can recognize how they have been led down that dark path and the pain or injury that has been inflicted upon them, triggering them to disconnect from their own empathy. So these types of dark behaviors can be conditioned into people in various ways, and often it begins in childhood where their consciousness is fragmented, where in order for them to process or cope with these very sadistic or nasty things that are done to them, they'll create different aspects to themselves, different fragments or alter personalities, which includes some that are actually very pleasant appearing, so personalities that would seem to be very compassionate, very humanistic, that would not want to do anything to harm anyone. So those might be kind of overly nice or overly people-pleasing, while at the same time an alternate personality of the same person could be taking on the role of the perpetrator and acting out the same types of violent or sadistic behaviors upon other people that were done to them. And you see that type of pattern often in people who are identified as sexual predators or sexual abusers, people that molest children in particular. Often they are doing to other people what was done to them at some point in their life. So this is a really challenging situation for everyone on the planet, and we can all do our best to try to stay centered and balanced, to set a vision or intention for a more positive society, a society where we work together more cooperatively and compassionately, where we don't have a tiny percent of the population seeking to hoard the vast majority of the planet's resources. And also, we can envision a society where we're not constantly presented with things to terrorize us, to make us afraid, things that are in some way meant to make us feel or think we're disempowered. So kind of a more spiritually oriented society that helps us see every one of us as co-creative beings, beings who can create lives of joy, of love and prosperity, rather than being in constant competition and feeling that things are scarce and that we have to struggle to survive. There are so many things that we carry within our consciousness that have been imprinted, in a sense, by the structure of society that we've been raised or brought up in. And many of those subconscious beliefs are quite dysfunctional and disempowering. So, for those that are looking into what's going on in the planet right now, if you want to understand things, you can't avoid conspiracy theories, so to speak. What those really are, in many cases, are people looking at the actual facts and evidence and the true history, the true science, and putting together a more rational and accurate picture of what's actually been going on. At this time, I would like to point out that some of the people that are speaking out about this alliance plan are mentioning that there could be a time in the near future where there are coordinated actions to begin rounding up and detaining and indicting the people. Well, actually, there's supposedly already many sealed indictments already that are just waiting to be acted upon. So to carry out that takedown of all these thousands and thousands of people who have been involved in those very dark activities that include war crimes, human trafficking, child trafficking, murder, sexual abuse, many intense kinds of financial crimes, so large-scale financial misconduct. There's many different activities that these cults have been involved with, and many people who are in some way involved in those activities. So this is a monumental mission or operation that would have to be carried out, and as part of it, it's being leaked or presented to the population that there could be a time of shutdown of communications where your normal internet access would not be there, normal cell phone service would be in some manner disabled. You might still be able to make emergency calls, but the regular functioning of those communication devices or networks would be temporarily cut off in order to go forward with these military operations that are at this point unavoidable in terms of carrying out the arrests of those involved in the very dark activities. There's a lot of information coming together at this point suggesting that this could be quite imminent, that it could happen quite soon. This comes both from people leaking from inside the alliance that Wilcock and people like him have talked about. There are also channeled sources coming through some mediums, through some psychic channelers who are presenting a rather similar story, saying that this is about to go down at this point. So it could be a scary time for many people, especially with the situation with the coronavirus, where everyone is already anxious about that, where much of the population is kind of in a stay-home mode or lockdown. So there's a lot of tension and stress already built up. And then if this action is carried out where communications are disabled, that could stoke additional fear. And then of course if that point or that part is completed and then it comes to the point where truthful information about what's actually been going on comes into the public domain, into more of the mainstream, there could be a lot of people in even further fear or even greater shock at all that's been unfolding. So as this all comes to pass at whatever point, I would like to support everyone in meditation, in mindfulness, in learning to just be present, to just be in the moment and trust in the higher power, in what you could call God, source consciousness, the infinite creator or great spirit, understanding that there is a greater intelligence that's guiding everything that's manifesting. We often get glimpses of that greater intelligence through intuitions, through synchronicity, through different mystical or spiritual experiences that we may have. So I encourage each of you to take time to be quiet, to be centered, to practice connecting to higher aspects of that consciousness that you are a part of, that you are connected to. And that can help bring some peace, some calmness, some comfort and contentment, trust and faith in whatever may be unfolding. We're all here to play our part, to contribute to the evolution of humanity and the evolution of consciousness. So I appreciate sharing that journey with all of you. For now, I want to wish everyone a wonderful day. Namaste.